This morning I'm talking to Jon Loomes, and Jon Loomes works for Dell Technologies as a services client executive. So firstly, thank you, Jon, for being with us today and helping our students to understand a little bit better what Dell does and what you do. And that is quite a mouthful of a job title. Can you tell us a bit about what it is you do and what that means?
Absolutely. Good morning. Great to be here. The word Dell may be familiar to some of your young people. Dell Technologies is actually the kind of umbrella company that sits above Dell, who make laptops and other things, but we do all kinds of things to do with technology, pretty much everything you can think. I work on the sales side of the business, and I'm responsible for selling consulting services around technology, which large customers tend to buy when they buy a lot of products from Dell. They want to buy advice to help them set up technology, and my job is to go and have discussions with customers, find out what problems they've got and how we can help solve those problems with our advice. So in a nutshell, that's what I do, and I'm sure as we work through this, hopefully you'll get more of a flavour for what my kind of day-to-day activities are like.
And that, yeah, brilliant. And that would be my next question: is what's a typical day like for you? I can see from where you are that you're at home, but in normal circumstances in your job, what would a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so as you say, I'm at home at the moment, but in terms of what I'm doing or what I've been doing through lockdown, it hasn't really changed. So a typical day, if there is such a thing, would be focused around several different areas. Firstly, I spend a lot of time in meetings with customers, usually doing something like discussing a particular problem they're trying to solve with technology. So asking lots of questions and trying to work out, how we can potentially help them. Or if it's an existing customer we're already working with, we might be talking about progress and any issues they've got, etc. Other parts of my day, I'm on internal meetings with my colleagues. So I work with fairly large teams of experts in different fields, depending on what we're working on. So we'll be discussing a customer's problem, potentially following a customer call, and how we're going to address it, etc. Rest of my time, I have to do a lot of forecasting because I work in sales. So I have a sales target I have to meet. So I have to create accurate reports and report on that as well. And then if I've got any spare time in the day, I'm doing training on upcoming technologies, doing research into companies I'm working with, etc. So kind of a mixture of that. And as I say, things haven't really changed. The only thing that's changed recently is all those meetings are now over Zoom, although we did do a lot over Zoom in the past anyway, but we would also visit customers at their offices, etc. And in terms of where I work, I'm pretty lucky in that Dell has always allowed flexible working. So I spend maybe half of my week in the office in London and maybe the other half at home, and then maybe 1 or 2 days traveling around to customers. So that's kind of a typical day.
Okay, and at the moment it's all at home.
It is all at home, yeah.
It's interesting you talk about the technology. Obviously our students are in this situation themselves where they're having to learn virtually, so what they're missing out on is the chance to work together, so that bouncing off each other when they're learning, because I think that's really valuable. And as you mentioned about working in large teams, the skills that we work with at the Academy are all about encouraging young people to develop their soft skills. And I think you've got that list of skills that we work with. I'd be very interested to hear from your perspective in your job, what you think the 3 most important skills are that you use and why.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, all the stuff in the list you gave me is stuff I do all the time. In terms of the top 3, listening, very important. So as I said, when I was describing my day, what I have to do a lot of the time is listen to customers who've got a particular business problem they're trying to solve, which may be they want to reduce costs, or they've got some particular business function or product they want to bring to market. a lot of the time these problems are very complex, and translating a customer's business problem into something we can solve with technology requires a lot of kind of interpretation of exactly what are they really trying to get as an outcome, and how can we add value to that. So I spend a lot of time listening. Second thing I chose off the list is kind of related, which is problem solving.
Problem solving.
And again, that can be solving a particular problem for a customer, or it can be a problem such as from a sales perspective. We really want to work with this customer, but there are commercial challenges. They like what we do, but it's too expensive, or they have budget challenges. How can we be creative from a commercial perspective? So I do a lot of sort of problem solving in that respect. Third thing I chose was aiming high. So as I said, I work in a sales role. I mean, a lot of people, I think, when you say you work in IT or technology, they immediately think that you're some kind of technical whiz who kind of spends a lot of time doing coding or something like that, which is the case. That's very important. That's a real growth area. But there are also salespeople in IT. There are HR people. There are finance people. There are legal people, etc. So if you're interested in a career in technology, it's not all necessarily about. So yeah, I chose it aiming high because, as I said at the start, I have a sales target I have to meet. So at the moment, my target is around $100 million a year of business that I'm responsible to bring in, and that's quite a large number. So I'm expected to meet or exceed that target every year. A large proportion of my pay depends on me doing that. And then a lot of people won't have any work to do, so a lot of other people's jobs kind of depend on that success. So, and I kind of thrive on that. So that kind of pressure environment wouldn't be for everyone. But if you're the kind of person who likes a little bit of competition, if you like, then that can be quite an exciting kind of role to be in. Always wanting to go one step further and do a bit better than you did last time. That's a part of my job that I really enjoy. So that's why I chose the aiming high.
Fantastic. You mentioned about sales, and most of my working life I've worked in sales in some form or another. Young people often don't think of sales as a career, but if you can sell, then you can sell whatever the product is would be my understanding. From your perspective, is that your career? Have you always sold different things, or what sort of got you to where you are now?
No, so I haven't. So I mean, I've worked in the industry for more than 25 years now. I did actually start out somewhat contradicting what I said a couple of minutes ago. So I started out on the more sort of technical side. So I mean, the first job the first kind of proper career type job I got in IT was in my early 20s. I worked for a few national newspapers, so the Times, etc. And I was doing effectively IT support on their editorial floor, so basically fixing things, which goes back to the kind of problem solving kind of aspect of what we talked about a couple of minutes ago. So that was all about fixing problems for people effectively. So fast forward a few years, I had a couple of technical based jobs, moved a couple of times, got a bit more senior. Then eventually I decided that I wanted to do something different, and I moved away from the technical and I moved into project management, which is really kind of managing teams of technical people doing the the actual technical work. So I did that for a long time, and it was actually that job which got me into the company which eventually became Dell. I joined Dell because of a merger which happened a few years ago. We were acquired by Dell, but I was a project manager. Did that for maybe 5 years, and then slowly kind of moved into a sales role. So first I moved into a role which effectively a team of people who support salespeople. So again, they're kind of the people I would work with today. So if I go to a meeting with a customer and it's about a particular technology area, I mean, I'm not an expert in everything, no one can be. So depending on what the technology area is, I will draft in someone who's an expert in that particular area. So that's a role I used to do, and then gradually kind of been very lucky, stayed with the same company and just morphed into a sales role. So I started off fairly junior, looking at very small customers. And now the role I do now is I work with the largest customers we have globally. So mostly in the kind of investment banking areas where I work at the moment with global banks.
Excellent. So I guess that means that your job isn't necessarily a 9-to-5 job because you're working with people in other countries.
That's correct, yes. So I'm dealing with the US a lot. So that's, goes into the evening hour time. Other days it can be sort of Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, etc., which means very, very early morning for us. And you just have to manage your time effectively because, otherwise you could end up starting at 7 a.m. and not finishing till 9 p.m. or later. So it's about time management, organizing your diary so that you're not kind of burning yourself out. And this is even more important these days. Now we're all working remotely because it's very easy for people to just schedule meetings whenever they like because they know you're not commuting, etc. And I think that's very important as well for the young people who are having to learn now over Zoom to still manage your day. So be kind of organized, get up at a certain time, get yourself ready. But that you're doing, make sure you take breaks, and then make sure you stop at a reasonable time as well. But also make the most of it in so much that when we're working remotely and when we're working with other countries. In my example, it means you can potentially give yourself a couple of hours break in the middle of the day because you're going to be working late into the evening, etc. So you can kind of make the most of that situation, but it does require some kind of careful time management. Yeah.
Absolutely, I would certainly agree with that. Speaking to a lot of people, I mean, I've worked from home for a long time, but a lot of people who are suddenly working from home, it's ever so easy to just check my emails at 9 o'clock at night, and you actually have to allow yourself separation, don't you? And again, for our students, it's the same. Absolutely, do your lessons, do your studying, but make sure you allow yourself that leisure time and plan it into your day. That's really good advice, Jon. Thank you. Talking about advice, one of the other areas of that we're really concerned and aware of at the moment are our students who have finished their A-levels, not just at Shoreham, because other students will see this video, who are maybe, there's nothing else they can do about their qualifications. They're waiting to be in a position to go and find employment, and they are at home. And as an employer, I'm sure if you were interviewing for somebody for your team, you'd want to know what they've done in that period of time. I'm just wondering what advice you might give to a young person who's in that situation. Maybe he's got a couple of months sitting at home. What can they do, especially if they're interested in this kind of industry sector? What could they be doing?
That's a great question. So there's a lot that can be doing, and it's quite easy, and it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. Yeah, so what I would advise people do is spend some time working on what we call personal branding. And by personal branding, what I mean, it's a combination of using social media, so perhaps LinkedIn or Instagram, or there are many social media platforms out there which you might choose to use. Use a brand name. It could be your real name, or you could create a brand for yourself. and essentially create a persona, an image, so that you give a perception out there that you are essentially an expert in whatever field that you're interested in. And to be an expert is not as difficult as it sounds. You only need to know a little bit more than the average person in whatever particular field you're interested in to essentially be considered an expert to a certain degree. And to that end, I would encourage people, as well as setting up their social media platform, do research, follow people on social media who are in the field, do some research into companies, read blogs, etc. Certainly in the technical industry, there are lots of things like free webinars, free courses that you can do to give you, an overview of a particular technology area. And whilst that doesn't give you necessarily a formal qualification, it will give you enough knowledge to better go and talk about a particular topic with a prospective employer at a later date, and just give them, show you've got at least a high level understanding of a particular technology area. And that is very, very valuable. And it's an old cliche in kind of career advice, but having gaps on your CV or gaps in your experience is a big no-no. So you want to fill those. As the personal branding, I would recommend looking at volunteering as well. That's seen in my industry and within Dell as a very big thing. Not necessarily anything to do with the actual career or industry you're in. It's just kind of shows again that you're a kind of rounded person who cares about the community, willing to give something back, etc. So you could fill all day every day doing research, doing personal branding, doing volunteering, doing online courses, etc. You could easily fill a day doing that. So I would recommend that you make the most of the time. It would be really, really valuable thing to do. And employees at a later date are going to really notice and really appreciate that you've made that effort.
And I think it's really valuable advice about that personal brand, because it wouldn't necessarily occur to a young person to develop themselves as a persona, even if you're going to go and work for another company. Just the very fact that you've created some sort of portfolio, so if you're interested in tech or creative or anything like that, so that you've got evidence of something that you've done, I think that's really valuable. And we are encouraging our young people to set up a LinkedIn profile, Jon, because I think understanding the difference between professional social media and personal social media, and how you can use professional social media. Recruiters are on LinkedIn, they're looking for the right people. So that's really valuable advice. Thank you.
And I would say, certainly on LinkedIn, do things like, make little videos, have an opinion, have a point of view on the particular topic you're interested in. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong necessarily, but just having the confidence to put it out there, people will appreciate that. The only other advice I would give, which is given to me all the time, is don't mix up business social media with personal social media. So keep it professional, keep it business-like. Don't put pictures of your breakfast on there, etc. Just think about what you're doing. What we're always told by our legal team is, if you're going to post something on social media about Dell or about the industry, imagine it on the front page of a newspaper or on the evening news the next day, and think to yourself, is that something that I would be happy with for people to see? And just go through that thought process before you post stuff.
And that's very appropriate for you as a young person yourself, because I know that employers, if you go for an interview, they're going to look you up.
Yes,
they're going to look your name up and see what they find. And so what you want to do is you want to present a very professional persona if someone's looking for you, rather than keep your your personal social media private, and have your business one available to be your CV, really, isn't it? It's kind of your visual CV out into the world.
Yes, it's very, very important. Yeah, so you just need to bear that in mind.
Fantastic. Jon, thank you so much for your time today.